Welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
So, our sources this week, it's a really compressed stack. We've got articles, strategic analyses, diplomatic notes,
A lot to get through.
a lot. And they all seem to focus on one single, just stunning moment in time. The extremely swift collapse of the Southern Transitional Council, the STC in Yemen.
Which just happened. We're talking around January 10th, 2026. Very recent.
Exactly. And, this isn't just news from a distant conflict. This is what key analysts are already calling the January reckoning.
Right.
It really feels like a signal event.
That's really the mission today. I mean, if you're trying to understand why the entire strategic alignment of the Red Sea seems to be in flux, this is the pivot point.
Right.
The dissolution of the STC, and it was contested, very messy. It didn't just end a political project. It immediately exposed these fundamental severe cracks between Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Who were supposed to be allies in this?
Supposedly. And crucially, all of this happened at the exact same time as a major geopolitical play on the other side of the Red Sea, in the Horn of Africa.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Why is a political collapse in South Yemen something you need to be concerned about? Because this event has massive strategic implications.
Massive.
This instability, it doesn't just threaten regional players. It directly threatens those critical Red Sea trade routes. I'm talking about the Bab el-Mandab Strait. If this cycle of fragmentation and sudden warfare continues, our sources universally warn that insurance costs for global maritime powers could just spiral.
And that risk gets immediately factored into the price of everything, anything moving between Asia and Europe.
The stability of that choke point is, at the end of the day, purely transactional for the global economy.
Absolutely. When stability goes down, global economic risk shoots up. And to really gauge the impact, we have to understand the speed of this shift. We need to look back and see why the STC's brief, promising future ended in such a dramatic, immediate collapse.
Let's start there, because the speed is genuinely shocking. The political ambition, it started with military success. The STC launched Operation Promising Future back on December 2nd, 2025.
And initially, it was a huge success story for them, a rapid one.
It was. They seized control of these vast oil-rich territories, specifically Hadramaut and Al-Mara.
Which, crucially, gave them control of the Masila oil fields. That's a massive economic leverage point.
And they wasted no time trying to capitalize on it. Their ambition was maximalist and very public.
It was. Just a month later, January 2nd, 2026, the STC issues a constitutional declaration. They called it the State of South Arabia.
So they weren't asking politely.
No, not at all. They were announcing a 2-year transitional period toward full independence. This was a direct challenge to the Saudi-backed, internationally recognized government of Yemen.
And that challenge lasted barely a week.
Yeah.
It really sounds like Riyadh viewed this not as a negotiation, but as a severe national security threat.
Oh, absolutely.
An independent UAE-aligned state suddenly controlling Saudi Arabia's entire southern maritime flank.
That's exactly the analysis. The Saudi response was immediate. It was overwhelming. Saudi-backed forces launched a decisive, very rapid counteroffensive in early January.
So the territories the STC took months to get, they were
Recaptured in days. The whole operation was so complete that the STC leader, Idris al-Zubaydi, fled the country entirely. He showed up in the UAE on January 7th.
So the organizational death came right after the military one.
It did, but we need to hold on to a key detail here, that it was contested.
Right.
On January 9th, the dissolution of the STC was announced. But this announcement came from members who had gathered in Riyadh, seemingly under Saudi pressure or, influence.
And what happened then?
Immediately, the official STC spokesman, who was operating out of Abu Dhabi in the UAE, contested it. He argued the dissolution was illegitimate.
So the organization wasn't just defeated, it was split.
Fundamentally split right along that Saudi-UAE fault line.
What's particularly fascinating to me is how the sources analyze what's left. I mean, despite this lightning-fast, decisive organizational defeat, we're seeing reports that the political idea of Southern independence hasn't died at all.
Not even close. It's merely been decapitated. The military victory, while complete in reversing the territorial gains, it did not extinguish the underlying political grievance.
So support is still there on the ground.
It remains extremely robust, particularly in areas like El Dale, which have historically been hotbeds of political activism. We're still seeing reports of protesters actively demonstrating against Saudi Arabia, waving the old flags of South Yemen.
The sources are pretty clear then. Organizational collapse does not equal political surrender.
Well, not at all.
That distinction, the quick military win versus the lingering political problem, it serves as the perfect catalyst for the second and arguably bigger story here.
Which is the total public strategic rupture between Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
This isn't just friction anymore, is it? This is a fundamental divergence of their regional strategies.
That's the core finding. The Saudi counteroffensive wasn't just about defeating the STC. It was a signal to the UAE that their actions in Yemen had crossed a red line.
And we have very specific, hard evidence of this breakdown, don't we? We have to look at the immediate actions Riyadh took.
Yeah, as early as December 30th, 2025, while the STC was still advancing, Saudi forces conducted airstrikes on Mukalla port.
And they were public about it. Riyadh claimed they were targeting what they called UAE weapons shipments.
And within 24 hours of that, Saudi Arabia declared a 90-day state of emergency. I mean, that is an overt military-grade declaration of hostility between two supposed allies.
So the sources, they outlined two fundamentally opposed regional visions that finally clashed in Yemen.
Right. From Riyadh's perspective, the UAE's backing of the STC and that expansion into key border areas, it just fundamentally undermines Saudi national security.
It's too close to home.
Way too close. Riyadh operates on this belief system of a state-centric hierarchical regional order. They want territorial sovereignty respected, diplomatic processes managed by central governments.
But the UAE's strategic calculus is clearly different. Our sources describe it as an aggressively independent regional policy.
Precisely. Abu Dhabi is focused on a networked port-based influence across the Red Sea. They prioritize flexibility. They establish partnerships with de facto authorities, not necessarily just official governments.
So whoever is actually in control on the ground.
Exactly. We see this influence structure they're building through investments in Aden, on the island of Socotra, and across the water in Berbera, Somaliland. That whole approach, using networks of non-state actors to project power, directly clashes with the Saudi preference for unified central state control.
In the aftermath, the press was quick to note how severe this rift was.
An Al Jazeera analysis noted the split was exposed like never before,
suggesting no easy diplomatic fix was in sight, even after the immediate crisis was over. And then we saw the UAE announce a voluntary withdrawal of forces.
That detail about the withdrawal is important. It suggests a tactical retreat, a recognition that they had lost this particular round in Yemen, but not a strategic capitulation.
So they didn't leave because they suddenly agreed with Riyadh's vision.
No, they left because they recognized the military risk of a direct confrontation was too high. The sources are definitive. The tactical friction in Yemen has now matured into a structural, long-term competition across the entire Red Sea theater.
Okay, we need to pull the lens back now and look at what was happening at the same time on the other side of the Red Sea. This is how we grasp the full strategic reordering. Because the timing, it's just astonishing.
It really is.
While the SGC was collapsing in Yemen, the Red Sea Basin experienced another major shock. Israel's recognition of Somaliland on December 26, 2025.
This is a major inflection point, a first. Israel became the first UN member state to officially recognize Somaliland.
And the Netanyahu government, they framed it as being in the spirit of the Abraham Accords.
Right, but the sources confirm this was not a rushed decision. Israeli security services, particularly Mossad, they'd spent years cultivating relationships in Hargeisa. This was the long-planned outcome.
And Somaliland's response was equally fast. President Abdullah quickly agreed to join the Accords, and both countries moved to open embassies.
The driving force here, according to the analysis, is explicitly Red Sea security.
Especially with the ongoing Houthi maritime disruptions further south.
Exactly. But what's really fascinating is how this ties back to the Gulf Rift. Intelligence reports from as far back as late 2024, they indicated detailed discussions between Israel and Somaliland.
About what?
About establishing an Israeli military base, allegedly mediated and funded by the UAE. Now, if that mediation and funding angle is correct, it ties the UAE's networked, port-centric strategy directly to Israeli security needs. It creates this complex triangular partnership that completely bypasses the traditional Saudi-led diplomatic approach.
But that recognition triggered immediate diplomatic alarm across the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. Somalia called it a flagrant assault on its territorial integrity. Key regional players like Egypt, Turkey, Djibouti, they all issued strong condemnations.
Warnings that it could inflame regional tensions. The African Union rejected it outright.
And this raised a crucial question about Gulf unity, right? Because while the international community broadly condemned the recognition, the Abraham Accords signatories, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, they notably did not sign a joint statement condemning it.
Their silence speaks volumes.
It really does. It suggests a deep divergence of priorities within the Gulf. The UAE is just continuing to pursue its own strategic relationships, regardless of what Riyadh wants.
So if we connect this all back to the STC collapse, this instability in Yemen, it fundamentally undermines any kind of complementary Red Sea pincer strategy.
It does.
That strategy relied on stable, cooperative partners on both sides of the Bab el-Mandab, the Yemeni side and the Somaliland side.
That analysis is spot on. The strategy was to create this zone of cooperative maritime control. With the collapse of the STC, that concept is now highly destabilized on the Arabian side, and it weakens the entire framework.
Let's shift now to the Horn itself, because this whole reordering involves massive ambitions from one of Africa's most powerful countries. I mean, we have to look at Ethiopia's relentless drive for sea access.
Which Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has repeatedly and explicitly described as an existential issue.
Right. Ethiopia, landlocked since Eritrea's independence, they see sea access as a necessary condition for their long-term survival, economically and strategically.
And they've acted on it. In January 2024, they signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Somaliland. It was for a 50-year lease on coastline, specifically for naval access.
And this deal was contingent on potential Ethiopian recognition of Somaliland, which gives that recognition immense strategic weight.
It does. But Egypt views this Ethiopian move towards the Red Sea through a very specific and very political and historic lens.
That's all about the Nile, isn't it?
It's all about the Nile. Cairo interprets Ethiopian ambition in the Red Sea as an extension of the dispute over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the GRD.
So for Egypt, these are two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. The GRD and a Red Sea presence are seen as interlocking challenges to their water security, their regional influence, their entire historic role in the Nile Basin.
So Cairo responded with more than just words. They deployed forces.
They did. To counter Ethiopia's ambitions and to secure leverage in those long-running Nile negotiations, Egypt deployed peacekeeping forces into Somalia, starting in January 2025. It's a very clear strategic move to increase their physical presence and balance the power in the region.
Okay, so this combination of events, the Yemen collapse, the Somaliland recognition, the Ethiopia-Egypt friction, it has crystallized two competing, almost opposed power structures in the region.
This is the synthesis, right? This is what our deep dive was designed to extract. We can really distill the power dynamic into two asymmetrical configurations.
What's the first one?
First, we have what the sources are calling the consolidationist axis. This includes Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. Their priority is stability through strict state adherence.
Holding territorial integrity, respecting sovereignty.
Exactly, using managed diplomatic processes. For them, the STC dissolution was a victory. Saudi Defense Minister Khalid bin Salman called it a courageous step toward dialogue under Riyadh's sponsorship. They want the map to look like the UN map.
And the second group, operating with a totally different set of rules.
That's the flexibility-oriented network. This includes the UAE, Israel, and potentially Ethiopia. Their priorities are fundamentally different. They focus on establishing port-centric networked influence.
And forging partnerships with de facto authorities.
Right. The people who actually control the ground, whether they're recognized states or not. They prize maneuverability in these contested spaces. It's why the UAE backed the STC and engaged with Somaliland. They are more interested in flow and access than fixed borders.
So what does this all mean for the security outlook? We started with the STC collapse, and we've established its link to the Horn of Africa, to this deep friction between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The whole situation feels incredibly fluid.
It is intensely so. And the sources, they highlight several high-probability threats that stem from this new fragmented environment. First, we face the threat of Houthi strategic opportunism.
They see an opening.
A huge one. They are keenly aware of the disarray in the south, and they will capitalize on it to project power, expand their maritime disruption, and ultimately reframe themselves as the only coherent, functioning authority in Yemen.
And then domestically in the south, the failure of the STC's formal military project could just translate into a new period of what, insurgency.
A fragmented, low-intensity conflict, that's the risk. The persistence of southern grievances, combined with available arms and unemployed fighters, it could lead to localized insurgencies distinct from both the Houthis and the government.
Which is precisely the environment that makes trade routes so vulnerable.
It is. The central challenge for all these regional powers, Riyadh, Cairo, Abu Dhabi, is clear. They have to construct durable political frameworks that can address legitimate national interests.
Whether that's Ethiopia's need for sea access, or southern Yemeni demands for autonomy, or Israeli security concerns.
Right. And do it without further fragmenting states that are already on the brink of collapse. It's the governance dilemma that overrides the military one. You can't keep exchanging one unstable political structure for another.
That brings us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. The January reckoning demonstrates powerfully that military victories without genuine political legitimacy, they produce Pyrrhic outcomes.
They do.
So the question you should be asking is whether this moment, where Saudi authority is dominant but still deeply contested in the south, will translate into a sustainable political architecture that actually includes those southern voices. Or is it just a short tactical pause before it all fragments again?
That's the question. Riyadh has to find a way to demonstrate its authority rests on political legitimacy and governance capacity, not just on military strength.
Because if they fail to pivot from military dominance to genuine political inclusion,
they will only be sowing the seeds for the next conflict and ensuring the Red Sea remains volatile for years to come.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.